We've been doing a whole series of talks on the Faith Mind Sutra, which is a writing by a person of long ago in China called Seng San. And he's written this thing called the Faith Mind Sutra. This is the 8th talk. So we're almost finished, maybe a couple more, and we'll be finished with it. If you're intrigued and you didn't hear the first ones, you can tune into our website where they're recorded, and you can listen to them online. The first one is missing, but from 2 to 7 are there. So I'm going to read you what we've done so far. It's hard to take in because it's very dense writing. But I'm going to read up to the lines for today's talk. So this is how it goes. The Great Way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold to no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect like vast space, where nothing is lacking and nothing in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglements of outer things, nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve quietness, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way fail in both activity and quietness, assertion and denial. To deny the reality of things is to miss their reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop thinking and talking, and there is nothing you will not be able to know. To return to the root is to find the meaning, but to pursue appearances is to miss the source. At the moment of inner enlightenment, there is a moment of going beyond appearances and emptiness. The changes that appear to occur in the empty world we call real only because of our ignorance. Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in this world can bother us. And when a thing can no longer bother, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. Just as the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Understand the relativity of these two in the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. To live in the Great Way is neither easy nor difficult, but those with limited views are fearful and irresolute. The faster they hurry, the slower they go, and attachment cannot be limited. Even to be attached to the idea of enlightenment is to go astray. Just let things be in their own way, and there will be neither coming nor going. Obey your own nature, and you will walk freely and undisturbed. When thought is in bondage, the truth is hidden, and everything is murky and unclear. The burdensome practice of judging brings annoyance and weariness. What benefit can be derived from distinctions and separations? If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with true enlightenment. Wise ones strive for no goals, but foolish people fetter themselves. There is one Dharma, not many. Distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. To seek mind with a discriminating mind is the greatest of mistakes. Rest and unrest derive from illusion, and with enlightenment there is no liking and disliking. All dualities come from ignorant interference. They are life dreams or flowers in the air. It's foolish to try to grasp them. Gain and loss, right and wrong, such thoughts must finally be abolished at once. All right, so that brings us to today's lines. I know it's long and hard to hear, but I feel I have to put today into a little context for you. So here are the lines we're going to talk about today. This is how they go. If the eye never sleeps, all dreams will naturally cease. If the mind makes no discriminations, the 10,000 things are what they are, of a single essence. To understand the mystery of this one essence is to be released from all entanglements. When all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. There are no comparisons or analogies in this ceaseless, relationless state. So those are our lines for today. So we're going to go over them one by one and see what they have to say. So the first line, if the eye never sleeps, all dreams will naturally cease. Well, this is logical, right? You know, if you don't go to sleep, you're not going to dream. But what the Faith Mind Sutra is talking about here are not sleeping dreams. He's talking about what probably we would call daydreams. This is what he said in the last line of the section we did before. He says, dualities are like life dreams or flowers in the air. It's foolish to try to grasp them. So he's talking about these life dreams or flowers in the air that he referred to before. So when he talks about the eye never sleeping, he doesn't mean that we don't, get our Z's in at night. What he means is the not sleeping that comes from being awake in your life. This is the not sleeping that comes from seeing the truth about who you are and what your life is. This is the not sleeping of seeing life as it is. Sometimes we call enlightenment waking up, right? That's what it's called. There's a book that a lot of people here like by Diane Rossetto, and it's called Waking Up to What You Do. It's the use of that, waking up. Sometimes when we're doing walking meditation and I see that people are like gazing around, I'll shout out, wake up! So, it's just another way of saying, be present, and a kind of synonym for enlightenment. So this is the kind of non-sleeping eye he's talking about, one that sees that the relative everyday truth of ordinary life is not all there is. There's also a larger truth, a deeper truth. And it's this that the open eye sees when you're awake in your life. Sang San emphasizes in this sutra that we have to actually wake up to both truths, the everyday, ordinary truth of our lives and the larger, deeper truth. It isn't like, it's kind of crazy if you deny the relative truth of everyday life. You know, it's there. It's not that that things don't exist. So you have to see that. But see, everyone comes into Zen practice already seeing that. We all are familiar with the ordinary world. So what we wake up to often in Zen practice is that other, deeper, larger truth. That larger truth in Zen is often called the absolute, and the everyday, ordinary truth is called the relative truth. And when we see both of them and are able to put them together, then that's called enlightenment. So when we come to Zen practice and we see one side, the relative everyday truth, we wake up to the absolute or deeper truth. And now we see the other side of truth. 2 points of view. In the second line, Sang San goes on to tell us that these dreams that we used to have are the very way of looking at things that cause the basic problem. He's warning us about discriminating. This is the big theme of this sutra. Do not discriminate. Do not have preferences. So in this second line he says, if the mind makes no distinctions, the 10,000 things are what they are, of a single essence. So again, he's using this word discriminations. He doesn't want us to see the differences, to make choices, to pick and choose, as some translations say. A mind that makes no distinctions is a mind that's woken up, a mind that's awake, a mind that doesn't sleep. What has that mind woken up from? It's woken up from a world where dualisms and separation seem to be all there is. That there's only this ordinary world where everything is separate. I'm not you and you're not me. West Philly is not South Philly. Philly is not New York. Everything is distinct and separate. A rose is not a daisy. So when you wake up to a world where there's no possibility of separating one thing from another. No possibility of valuing one thing more than another. No possibility of comparing one thing to another. You know, it's hard to understand, but it's kind of like, you know, if you look at a car, that's one thing, right? But it's got tons of little parts and screws and metal and plastic things. So there's all sorts of things in it, but it's one. And so this is how Buddhism sees the world. It's one big thing, and it has all these parts. You're one of those parts, I'm one of these parts. Deserts are one of those parts. Rainforests are one of those parts. So there's all these individual separate things in it. But it's all one. This is what Buddhism means when it says everything is one. The sutra says the 10,000 things are what they are. The 10,000 thing means everything, the whole universe. what this sutra is saying here is the same thing that the Heart Sutra says. When we finish here today, we're going to chant the Heart Sutra, and you'll hear it's saying the same thing. The Heart Sutra says form is emptiness. So what it's saying is all these separate things are really one big thing, because they can't exist without the other things in the universe. Why? Because things are all together, and they're influencing each other. You would not be what you are if all the people you had met, and the place where you grew up, and the schools you went to, and all of that stuff, they've made you what you are. They have an effect on you, an influence. And you, in your turn, have an effect on them. There's an exchange. Your family has an effect on you. You have an effect on your family. So Buddhism is saying, because everything is influencing each other, you can't really separate anything out. If I separate you out from all those influences, you would not be who you are. So it's saying you can't really separate them out, because we are what we are, and everything else is what it is, because of all the forces affecting it. So in a sense, if that's how you look at the universe, you can say it's one, because we can't really separate it. So that's what it's saying here. So the 10,000 things that he's talking about here stand for the world of form, the everyday world of individual pieces. So what Sang San says is what the Heart Sutra says, form is emptiness. He's saying that all forms are necessarily empty. And because they are empty, they can be said to be what he calls of a single essence. Regardless of how diverse the forms are, they're one, a single essence. If all things are empty, then we're all the same thing. We're all empty. So that's one. When we've woken to the world of all things are one, we've woken to the world of Buddha nature, of what Suzuki Roshi calls big mind, where all is one. What is this one that Sang San is calling a single essence? If you are Buddha nature and I am Buddha nature, then you and I at that level are one. So in the everyday world, I'm not you and you're not me. But in this mind, this big mind, where everything influences everything else and everything is empty, then you and I are the same thing, because we're both empty. So both things are true. I'm not you and you're not me, but you and I are the same thing. There's no way to tell me from you at that deep level of truth. There's no way to contrast us or compare us. We're the same. We're both Buddha nature. There's no way to discriminate between us. We're both Buddha nature. So if you and I are the same thing, we're of a single essence. Another translation of this, of a single essence, is of one suchness. It's just another way it's translated. Of one suchness. What is that suchness? Emptiness. What is this Buddha mind, big mind, this one essence, this one suchness? Nobody knows. We can experience it, big mind, but we can't say exactly what it is. You know, there's a Zen saying, the four worlds are nothing but mind. But all the brain scientists in the world do not know what mind is. So this is the mystery, the mysticism of Zen, of Buddhism. It's something we have to get intuitively, spiritually, because you can't understand it. We don't know what it is. I just heard a program on NPR yesterday talking about the brain, and the person narrating the program said, we don't actually know most of what goes on in the brain. This was like a brain scientist. So it's a mystery. We don't know. This is why the next line of the sutra says, to understand the mystery of this one essence is to be released from all entanglements. This one essence is one suchness, or we could also call it Buddha nature. It is a mystery because no one can grasp it. No one can hold on to it. No one can describe it precisely in words. If I could, I'd tell you what it is. But it's because it's beyond words. It just can't be communicated in words. And yet, we have the whole of Buddhist scriptures trying to communicate it. You know, Buddhist scriptures are vast. There are thousands, whole rooms can be filled with Buddhist scriptures over the years. You know, Buddhism doesn't throw stuff out and say it's heretical. They just add it on. So we've got lots of scriptures. And we have thousands of modern books. When I first started to study Zen in like 1981, there were hardly any books in English on Buddhism. Not much at all. Now there are thousands. Can't keep up with them. We have a whole library in there. And we don't even have half of what's published. And all of these writings are trying to tell us this one essential point. What is real? It's trying to tell us who we really are, because we're mistaken about that. And there's only one way to know the answer to these questions, and that's through our own experience. You know, Zen says you have to drink the water yourself and know for yourself whether it's cold or not. You know, if I could be like a fairy godmother and go around and say, you're enlightened, you're enlightened, you're enlightened, I'd do it. But you got to do it yourself. It's mysterious what we have to realize, what we have to wake up to. But it's not rare. It's as close and familiar to us as our own skin. But we have to see it. The rest of this line says that this one essence is crucial. It's crucial because it's the answer to Sang San's biggest concern. He doesn't want us to have preferences. He doesn't want us to make distinctions. He doesn't want us to pick and choose. And how do we not do that? We do it by seeing this oneness. Because, you know, if you're in your everyday world, of course you have to pick and choose. You have to decide whether you're going to have a salad or a sandwich for lunch. You know, just not make no distinctions. I mean, that doesn't make sense in the everyday world. But in the larger world, this is what he wants us to see, that there are no distinctions. He tells us that the mystery of this one essence is what releases us from entanglements. Why? Why does it release us from entanglements? If there's only one thing, what is there to get entangled with? Nothing. So this is what he's saying to you. Once you see that it's all one and you don't make distinctions, you get out of all these funny corners you get yourself backed into. These entanglements he's talking about are the difficulties that we face when we see the world as a duality. So these entanglements are all the choices he's warning us about. When we think that everything is separate, that introduces duality. That introduces this and that, you and me. And as soon as there are two things, we have conflict, we have choices. So once we see the world of this one, the world of the absolute, the world of big mind, then we're released from these entanglements, both inner entanglements of ideas and emotions and outer entanglements of making choices. The next line says, when all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. We've talked about in some of the past talks about why when we see this oneness, this absolute, that all things are equal. Because they're Buddha nature, because they're all the same thing, they're all one. The sameness results because of they are all this timeless self-essence that Sengsan is talking about here. You know, this is a kind of interesting word that he uses here, self-essence. You know, one of the big controversies in Buddhism is that there is no essence. You know, so this shows how difficult it is to translate ideas into words. The kind of essence that Buddhism denies is in the sense of a form, that there's some kind of irreducible kernel of some reality that's somewhere in each person. And Buddhism says, no, there isn't any essence. Nor does, the cushion have an essence. It's essentially empty. You know, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, it's mostly space. It doesn't look that way to us, but all those little atoms are buzzing around in there, and they're mostly space in them. So it's empty. Plus, it's always changing, so it's not the same. Plus, it can't exist by itself. It has to exist in a whole web of causes and effects. So Buddhism denies an essence. So Sengsan here is using essence to refer to emptiness, to big mind. He's not using it in the sense of some irreducible little something that's in the middle of each thing. You know, there are philosophies that hold that, there's this little thing that's totally real about each thing. But Buddhism says no. The translator uses the word essence, and it just shows you what kind of language difficulties you get into when you try to explain Buddhism in words. It just doesn't lend itself to explanations. In this case, the translator uses timeless essence to point to emptiness. And this can be confusing if you take emptiness to be some kind of core reality. Although all things are empty, according to Buddhism, all things are not absent, they haven't disappeared. And thereby lies the mystery that the Sutra also speaks of. How is it that things can exist as both relative, as forms, as individual parts, and also as empty? How can that happen? How can both be true? And how do we put them both together so that we can act skillfully in our life and understand? The last line that we're going to talk about today is this one. It says, there are no comparisons or analogies in the ceaseless, relationless state. Again, he's talking about comparisons. Another translation of this line by another translator says, there is no measuring or comparing when the subject disappears. The subject means you, the observing mind. Relationless here means relative. There are no comparisons or analogies in this ceaseless, relationless state. He just says relative, that he's calling it relationless. What the Sutra is saying is a point that's very familiar to us. In the relative world of form, we can measure and compare 10 miles, 14 yards, 3 hours. In fact, we can't help doing this in the relative realm. But here, Sengsan is talking about a different world, the world of the absolute. He calls it a relationless state, i.e. not relative. So if it's not relative, it's absolute. If it's not small mind, it's big mind. So from this point of view, Nothing is relative because there is only one thing. There's nothing to relate anything to, nothing to compare anything to, because there's only one. Sengsan also calls this world ceaseless. He says, no comparisons or analogies in this ceaseless, relationless state. Why does he call it ceaseless? It's ceaseless because it is a world where there is no time. You know, just remember that time is a measurement, right? We measure it by clocks and watches. And so measurement always involves comparison with some other unit. You know, it's 5 inches, it's not 3 centimeters. It's 10 miles, it's not 2 miles. It's Tuesday, it's not Saturday. But the Sutra has already eliminated the possibility of comparisons. Clearly, there is no time in this ceaseless world. In fact, you could say, one way of saying it would be every moment is an eternity. We all know that subjectively in our life that time is very different from what it is on the clock. You know, when you're waiting in the line at the bank, it seems like an hour. It might actually have been only 10 minutes. When exciting, wonderful things are happening, it may seem like 5 minutes, but it might have been already 45 minutes. So, you know, we don't really measure time in a subjective way in a world of the absolute. So what is Sengsan trying to teach us in this sutra? You know, he repeats a lot of the same points over and over again. So what he's trying to do is wake us up out of our daydreams, our delusions. He wants us to see that the everyday world of separation is not all there is. It exists, but it's not all there is. He wants us to see that all those choices we feel so caught up in are both very crucial. On the one hand, in the relative world, we have to be very careful what we choose, right? It's consequential. But in the absolute world, you know, there are no choices at all. He wants us to see that once we realize the truth, the burden of so many choices is lifted, and we can find rest rather than unrest. He sees realizing oneness as the way we can escape the difficulties of the Great Way, the entanglements of our lives. The Great Way is the Buddhist path. It's called the Great Way. Normally we think it's hard, right? You're sitting there, your legs are hurting, you know. You're hearing this stuff that sounds like gobbledygook. It's hard. But on another level, it has no difficulties. So we read Sengsan's words, we listen to them, we contemplate the teachings, and little by little, he helps us to open up to his paradoxical words. It's a dense, a difficult sutra, but has a lot to say to us.